Week 11 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few kickers I located off the wire this week. The first guy, Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Boswell, it's been a solid season for the most part for him, for the Steelers team. And we know the Steelers team, they stall out a lot on drive. Boswell, he's getting many opportunities this season. This team don't punch it in the end zone a lot, especially in the red zone. In the last few games here for Boswell, Week 8 versus Jacksonville 3, Week 9 versus Tennessee 7, Week 10 versus Green Bay 13, and Week 11 here, it's at the Cleveland Browns, a bend but don't break type of defense, where I think opportunities in a division game will be there for Boswell. Like I said, he's one of the more accurate kickers in the league this season, available right now in 81% of fantasy leagues. And this Steelers team, they're not great at finding the end zone in the red zone, so I think a few opportunities will definitely be there for Boswell as the season goes on. Now, while he's out there in tons of leagues, I'd give him an ad this week. The next kicker, Moody of the San Francisco 49ers. So Moody, in his rookie season, the first few weeks of the year, he was off to a monster start. And then he definitely tailed off and missed some field goals in a few games as Moody. But right now, back on track with a good game in Week 10 at Jacksonville with 10 fantasy points. And obviously, we know he's in a high-powered offense and one of the best offenses in the league with the San Francisco 49ers team. So right now, Week 11, a good matchup versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Give up the 15th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. And this offense looks like after the bye week, they straightened things out, and they went out there versus a good defense in the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they tore them up. In that ball game was the San Francisco 49er offense. Offense looks like it's back in sync. Deebo Samuel back. He scored a touchdown in that game. And I think the opportunities are going to start coming around once again for Moody. And he's available in 75% of fantasy leagues. The next kick is Matt Amendola, the Houston Texans. So Matt Amendola, he's bounced around the league over the last few seasons with the New York Jets. We saw him in a few games with the Patriots a few years ago and the Kansas City Chiefs. And now with Fairbairn on IR, he's the kicker for this Texan team, and he had 12 points in his debut of the season at Cincinnati. So this Texan team, we settled for a lot of field goals this season, and they are a team as well that gets in the red zone a whole lot and have an explosive offense led by C.J. Stroud, Devin Singletary the last few weeks, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz. So good weapons on the offense. They get in field goal range a decent amount of times per game, and Amendola for at least the next 3 weeks is going to be the kicker for this Houston Texan team. Available right now, 99% of fantasy leagues. So with a good matchup coming up in Week 11 versus the Cardinals that give up the 9th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. And he's in a great offense. He's definitely an ad this week. The next kicker, Greg Joseph of the Minnesota Vikings. So Greg Joseph, he's been a solid kicker this season. After a few years ago, he was top 10 in fantasy points at the position. But Greg Joseph's gone out there and had solid performances. Right now, he's available in 89% of fantasy leagues. This Minnesota offense, even without Kirk Cousins, they're still getting in the red zone. They're still scoring touchdowns, and they're still getting opportunities here to score the football at least 4 or 5 times per game in general here. So Week 8 at Green Bay 5, Week 9 at Atlanta 9, Week 10 versus the Saints 10, and Week 11 here, good matchup at the Denver Broncos for Joseph, where they give up the 6th most fantasy points to kickers on the season. And their defense really can't stop anyone. We've seen it early in the season, 70 points to the Dolphins. I know the defense has improved over the last few weeks, even though I think that game versus the Chiefs was a little fluky where Patrick Mahomes was the flu and wasn't 100%. But anyway, I think Joseph and this Viking team, they're going to have opportunities to get field goal chances and score touchdowns. And right now, while he's playing good football the last few weeks, he's definitely a kicker to add off the wire this week. And the final kicker I looked at off the wire this week here, Greg Zuerlein of the New York Jets. So pretty much Greg Zuerlein, he's more than 50% of this Jet offense. The Jets that haven't found the touchdown in the last 2 games is this team. And Greg Zuerlein is having great games now the last few weeks. Week 8 at the Giants 7, Week 9 versus the Chargers 8, and Week 10 at the Vegas Raiders 16 fantasy points. So Week 11, I think more of the same we're going to see from Greg Zuerlein. With this Jet team, they just crap out in the red zone, and they got to settle for field goals pretty much every week here. They just can't find ways to find the end zone, is this New York Jet team. Greg the Leg, we know, has got a great boot. And this season, it's definitely been a nice bounce-back season for Greg Zuerlein. So right now, while he's more than 50% of this Jet offense and one of the better kickers in the league in terms of accuracy and field goal percentage, available right now in 90% of fantasy leagues. That's a few kickers I looked at off the wire here in Week 11 of the fantasy football season.